I'm going to talk to you today about the scourge, hive beetles. And I think every beekeeper uses the phrase, the only good hive beetle is a dead hive beetle. And we love to take our trusty tool, and as they're walking around, either on your inner cover or on your frame, smash them, whack a beetle. And we all love to do it. But wouldn't you like to open your hive and see very few or none at all? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the way I handle hive beetles, but there's multiple different ways. I'm going to mention each one of them, but I'm going to show you the two that I use almost exclusively, and I've had good success with it. But I'm going to start out by saying the best defense against hive beetles is a strong hive, because a strong hive will basically keep hive beetles at bay. Mostly because hive beetles lay their eggs in open cells of a hive. And if you've got a very strong hive and there aren't a lot of open cells for them to lay in, then they can keep them at bay. But the flip side of it is, even when you've got hive beetles, you get a lot of them. You got bees that are spending a lot of time herding the hive beetles into spaces, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's taking care of the hive and collecting nectar, pollen, and doing what bees are supposed to do. So if you can keep them at bay for the most part, you're keeping your bees busy and not busy keeping hive beetles. So let's talk about the multiple different methods. So the methods that are out there is what I'm going to show you today, which are Beetle Blasters. And I like these a lot, but you've got to know how to use them, and I'm going to show you how to use them. And a couple different ways that you can fill them. That's one way. Another way is dryer sheets, and I don't use dryer sheets. I haven't had a lot of success, but some people really swear by them. And dryer sheets basically go on top. I don't have any dryer sheets in the house, but I do have a fake one. It's just a napkin, but I can show you how people place these. When I have used dryer sheets, and it's been 6-7 years since I've done it, you basically don't put a whole dryer sheet in, but don't make it too small either. But you take a whole dryer sheet and you can put it on top of, this is a brood box, you put it on top of your honey super. Hive beetles tend to climb up, or they get chased up. You just put it on top, you leave it there, and hive beetles' legs get caught in the fabric of the dryer sheet. What I found is I also had some bees that would get caught in the dryer sheet as well. And effective, for me it really wasn't, but other people swear by it. If you're going to use a dryer sheet, they have to be unscented dryer sheets. That's highly critical because the bees hate the smell. When I use dryer sheets, I cut them about in half. Don't cut them too small. I learned that the hard way. I cut them small thinking, I want to put some strips in different places. And I came out a few days later and the dryer sheets are sitting on the ground. I'm like, how did they get on the ground? And then I figured out the bees dragged them out of the hive because they're a foreign thing. So keep them a little bit bigger if you're going to use those. Enough about dryer sheets. Another thing that people use are things that look like CDs. And people have had success with those. You open up the trap, and it's a maze that beetles will work their way into because it's dark and they're trying to get away from the bees. And then in the center, you put a type of insecticide that the beetles eat, and it kills them. My only issue with that, I'm kind of opposed to putting insecticides inside my hives. I know a couple friends that use them, swear by them, love them. For me, I'm just a little bit leery about putting something that kills bugs inside of one of my hives. It probably is an issue, but I just don't do it. So that's a couple. And then a third one, or a fourth one, or whatever, how many we're on at this point, that I use, and I use on all my hives because I have multiple use for these trays. And they're the slide-in trays, and they're called a Beetle Tray. This is dirty, but it needs to be cleaned before I put it back into use. But these trays also do a great job for me, and they function multiple different purposes for me. So that's another thing that I'm going to talk about. So today, we're going to talk about the tray I'm putting away right now and Beetle Blasters. So let's talk about Beetle Blasters. The basic premise behind these is that you put these into your hive between frames, And the bees chase the beetles into these holes. The beetles want to get away from the bees, so they will climb into these holes. But what they don't know is you've got a little surprise down below. Something that's going to kill the beetles. You leave these in the hives, and for me they've been pretty effective. You pull them out and there's a couple hundred hive beetles after a month or two. You feel pretty good about it. So what do you put inside of Beetle Blasters? The two things that I've used the most, one is diatomaceous earth, and you can work that into the holes in between, and you put it down below and the beetles get into it, and it basically it's like little shards of glass, and they cut themselves up. They can't get out. And they die that way. But they don't die real fast that way. I've had some effectiveness with it, but I've also, on occasion, seen a beetle find its way out, and it's full of DE, diatomaceous earth, and it's going through the hive. It's like, okay, so I've got DE going a little bit going through the hive. So I went away from that, and what I really found to be effective was vegetable oil. Some people are squeamish about having vegetable oil in their hives, but if you work it correctly, you don't have a problem with it. What I love about it is that when the beetles hit it, they die instantly and they are suspended in the oil. So if there's any disease or whatever, as they're slowly decomposing or rotting like they will do in the DE, none of that whatever might be in them could possibly get out. They're basically in an oil cocoon. So I'm going to use oil, show you how to use that. You can use DE if you want, and there may be some other ways, but I'm going to show you how I use this. There are a couple ways to fill these. The one way that is probably the most common is off of the hive, taking your bottle and just filling it up and being careful and watching how much you fill it up. You want to fill it about halfway up, okay? So you can do that, but it can get tricky and it can get messy. But if you want to do it without further expense, that's one way. But I found another way that I really like because it allows me to fill in the hive is using these syringes. Now, I originally bought these syringes for doing OA dribbles, and I still use those for OA dribbles as part of my varroa mite plan. Whole different topic, whole different video. But these are pretty cheap. I'll put a link to where I bought them on Amazon. They didn't cost a lot, but they have served multiple purposes for me. And one purpose they serve is filling these. First, I'm going to show you how I put these in the hive, then I'm going to show you how I fill it with the oil. So you put these in the hive. I always put them in the far corner, and if you see, there's one end that's longer than the other. And I put them in the far corner, on the far end of the frames, and make sure that they sit level. And let me go back and say real quick, why am I doing this inside, not inside a hive? 107 or 110 heat index outside. Two things. Number one, I don't want to open up the hives because right now the bees are doing everything they can to control their heat and cool, and I don't want to mess with that system they've got. And number two, I don't want to be out there. That's insane. It's 111 degrees. Anyway, so doing it here, plus it's a little bit more controlled, and you can see how I'm doing it without bees flying all over the place, and you can see me. So these go into the corners. Now, depending on the types of frames you've got, it can be tight. What you want to do is find a way somehow to get these two frames so that this sits flat. And this is pretty crucial to the whole effectiveness of this, is these sitting flat will make sure the beetles don't crawl up underneath this ridge right here and hide. And it's pretty easy to have that happen. So you don't want to do that because then the beetles are just hiding and the bees are keeping them at bay. You want the beetles in here, you don't want them underneath here. So you put it in here, again, long side, and here's another part that's really crucial when you're doing it, is push it up against the ends of the frame blocks right here. Because what that does is it also prevents the beetles from getting underneath on this edge. So you put these in here, and I always put two in, and I actually have this one already filled. You can see what it looks like filled, and I'm going to show you how I did that. And I put the other one in the other corner. And again, I make sure that they sit flat. So then let me show you how I fill this on the hive. And I like doing that versus filling them outside the hive because it's real easy to accidentally spill oil one way or the other. Moving this in, a little clumsy, and if a bee gets oil on it, it's dead, period. Bees won't clean it off, and I prefer not to oil my bees to death. So if I put it in here and I use a little tub of oil, so I take my syringe, and I have found that between 15 and 20 milliliters gives me just about exactly what I want. In fact, I usually try to hem somewhere around 17. And I simply, off of the hive, away from the hive, I take my syringe and I just suck it up, and then I go back down to about 17 or so. And then on the hive, I just simply in the middle and slowly fill it up. Now I have a little bit of oil in there, not a big deal, I can wipe it off. But now I have caused no issues with my bees whatsoever. And that's about what 17 milliliters does. I said about a third or two-thirds, or not two-thirds, about a half. So that's 17. If you want, you can go a little higher. This is 20 milliliters. So that might, for me, be a little bit much, but that'll hold a lot of dead beetles. But there you go. They're in the hives. You're good to go. Make sure they're flat. You close up your hive, and away you go. I come back and check them. Now the bees are going to propolize these in, especially if they're not fully flattened down. If they're fully flattened down, they don't propolize them in as much. Makes it a little bit easier to get them out. But when you take them out, again, I want you to be really careful because there's still oil in there. And you want to make sure that you don't dump oil on your bees. One of the tricks I found that makes it a little bit easier or safer is when I take these out of the hive, I start at the far end and I pry up as much as I can and I get as loose as I can on each side, and then I always try to take it out this way so that if I do spill any oil, I'm spilling it on me and I'm not spilling it on the bees. So again, when you take these out and they're done and they've done their thing, take them out from this direction and take them this way so that you're not putting oil in the hive. And if you do spill some oil in the hive, hopefully it's going to go down the side of the hive and not into the hive. What do you do with them when they're full or they've been in there for 2 or 3 months and they're getting kind of gunky? You throw them away. They're not that expensive. You can buy them from your local bee store. I buy them on Amazon by I think there's 24 or so in a case. Again, I'll put a link to that. They may be affiliate links, but feel free to buy them anywhere that you want to. I also will put a link for these I got on Amazon. And again, it would be an affiliate link, but please don't feel obligated to buy off of those. Buy as you want to. But again, I use these for lots and lots of different things, especially for doing OA dribble. They work great for this. You may find tons of different uses of it. And then you also comes with a cap so that you can put that on afterwards so that you don't get it all over you when you're talking. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to see how I really put these on a hive. It's not that difficult, but I think sometimes it's better. I know inside it gave you a really close visual, but I'm sometimes working around live bees and an active hive. This will give you an opportunity to see how I have to separate things out a little bit. Bees are a little feisty today, so we're going to see what we can get into here, but hopefully everything is good. So I got my stuff. I'm going to take the mega rocks off here, and I've got my Hive Beetle trays. Those will go on the hive. I've got my syringe. We talked about that inside. And I've got my oil. I like this Pyrex cup mainly because if I've got anything left at the end, it just goes right back in and I don't have to worry about it. It just makes it easier to pour and a little bit easier to work with. Got a little handle on it. That's kind of handy. So let's get at this and make it happen. So before I open the hive up and things get crazy, I'm going to put the oil in. Try to put that in a safe place. Although I don't have a real safe place here. This is kind of tricky because of where I'm at in these hives, but let's just be really careful up there. So we're going to open these up, hopefully slide these right on, and you'll see what's going on with it. If you lean on your hive cover when you lift it, you avoid most of the pop. On some days it doesn't work as well as others. I guess that's just the way that goes. These guys are in pretty good shape hive beetle wise. I've not seen as many. There's one that is going to meet its demise. Get it out of the hive. And I got a little hive inner cover issue there. It'll be time for a new one soon. Carefully taking this off as to not disturb and irritate the bees. And then hopefully be able to put these on. You got to make space. So I'm going to squeeze these apart a little bit more. You want the beetle traps to sit flat, very important. And then you try to get the bees out of the way. I've got a little burr comb I didn't see there that's going to have to come out. Because you want them to sit flat, because hive beetles will do everything they can to hide underneath it. And if you're really careful, the bees will sneak out from underneath it. Come on out of there, girls. Everybody out. I got one underneath on that side. Okay. And we're clear. And again, I like to get these down as tight as I possibly can so that hive beetles can't hide underneath them. I'm going to do this on the other side now. Again, just try to squeeze those apart as much as you can so that the tray is going to sit solid. Check any burr comb. Carefully slide your tray in. I didn't see the burr comb in between. My bad. And I'll just let that sit down in the hive and they will use it for other purposes. So let's get this down in its place. Get the bees out from underneath it. Get the bees out from underneath it. Get out from underneath there. Thank you. Quit going there underneath there. It's not as much fun as you think it might be. As flat as I can possibly get it, into the corner. There. It's just that easy to place it. Now we take our syringe, and I am going to not risk. I'm going to fill the syringe over here on the side. And I said before and said inside, I put about 15 to 17 milliliters. Is just fine. And again, I push it right up against it because I don't want any oil getting out into the hive. Now, I know I'm going to get comments about why don't you use diatomaceous earth. I said it inside, I'm going to repeat. There's two reasons I don't use DE. One is I don't think it kills the beetles as quickly, which means the beetles still stay alive down in there. And I think as they decay, and they're going to decay because they're a living organism, and when that happens, I don't want that decay really in the hive. I've read nothing that says that that actually happens. It's just a step for me. Second is I have actually seen hive beetles climb back out. The sides are slippery, but the hive beetles can sometimes get back out, and then they're dragging DE through the hives. What's the negative of oil? The big negative of oil is that you've got to be a careful beekeeper. When you take these out of the hive, they've got oil in them. So you have to be able to carefully take them out so you don't spill oil. Again, so when you take them out, and I'm not going to show that, but when you take them out, I basically start on the far end and I work my way up a little bit, and I work this in, and I get it so that I've got everything out of the hive. I take them out backwards so that there's no chance that they're going to bail into the hive. Do the same thing on that side. You got to be in front of the hive for a few minutes, but that's just the price you have to pay. But I love Beetle Blasters. I think they do a great job. I use those in combination with a tray in my screen bottom board, and it just keeps beetles at bay. Now, out at the farm, I have very few issues with hive beetles because those hives are very much in the sun. Here, I'm really surrounded by woods. And I know it's not the best place for hives, but the flip side of it is these girls produce like crazy for me. So
that's the process. I got 5 other hives to do here, so I got to be moving on.
Now let's talk about the beetle tray that I've got in the bottom. And as I said before, I've got multiple uses for these. I've talked about them in other videos about what I really use them for year-round, basically. But these trays, and they're not cheap, but if you treat them right, they'll last quite a while. A lot of people are like, oh, they break all the time, they're terrible. It's like, no, you're just not treating them right. And I got to be able to get underneath it to get them out. And you just pull them out like that. But I'm going to move this back over here so it makes a little bit more sense for us filming it. But, so the trays. These are designed originally to kill bugs that would be in the hive. Go back again, I'm going to talk about the hive beetles lay larvae in your hive. The hive beetle larva then crawls its way out of the hive. It has to drop into the ground where it then mutates into a hive beetle. If they can't get to the ground, they can't become hive beetles. So to do that, this tray does a great thing. So it's got 2 parts to it. It's got this really dirty tray. I need to clean this off before I put it in the field, but it's going to go out in the field after tomorrow, I think. But it's got 2 parts. So beetles obviously are big enough to fall through that. Larva is big enough to fall through that, but bees can't get through it. So it'll sit in the hive, and it's also below the screen on the inside of the screen bottom board. And then what I do, again, there's 2 things you can put in here, is you need to put something that kills the beetles when they land and end up in here. Again, you can use diatomaceous earth. I don't like that because there are some places bees can somehow get into these a little bit. People use DE. I'm okay with that if they want to do that. I use oil, again. And I'm not going to fill this one up because I'm in my shop. It's going to be a mess. But I basically just take enough oil that it puts about maybe a 32nd of an inch that covers the whole bottom. And you want the whole bottom to basically be covered, but you don't want it to be a big soupy mess that you're dealing with. You just want to coat the bottom of it enough that when a beetle hits it, they hit that oil and they're gone. Larvae they're just dead. So you want to do that, but the other thing you got to be careful of, and you got to check these pretty often, is that the bees bring pollen in. When the bees bring pollen in, it'll also kind of fill up in here the pollen that they lose. So you want to keep an eye on it just to make sure that that pollen doesn't soak up all the oil. Then simply put the cover back on, slide it in, and you're done. And just let it do its thing. Again, I've talked about these before, and I'm going to talk really briefly about why I like these so much. They form a pretty tight seal. I'm all about your hive being fairly sealed off. I know people are like, oh, you need ventilation. You need to be able to have the bees breathe. And it's like, no, I use a screen bottom board so I can catch gook at the bottom. It doesn't mutate on the bottom solid board. Everybody's got their preferences. You talk to 10 beekeepers and it'll give you 15 answers about which bottom boards are the best. I use these because it gives me the option of using it as a beetle trap. In the winter, it allows me to close things off, so I've still got a tight seal, so that I'm using this as a way to keep my hives solid enough that they can be condensing hives, and I've talked about that in another video earlier this year. So they just work really well. Again, they're not cheap, but you know, in time they'll pay themselves back in the health of your bees. Another thing you can do to help keep beetles from getting into your hive, and there's a bunch of different reducers, entrance reducers that are supposed to be beetle proof. I've never tried them, so jury's out on them. Some of them look pretty interesting. You know, the basic logic behind it is hive beetles can't hover, they've got to come straight in. And they come straight in and land on the landing board, and then they crawl up and they crawl in. The entrance reducers are designed to keep that from working. I've never used them. I'm a little intrigued by them, but if I do start to use them, I'll follow up and let you know. Another thing, and I do this, and I've got 2 different systems I use. One of my hive stands, and it's here at the on our property here, I had a friend give me a roll of rubberized gym flooring, and I put that underneath the hive stand. The hive beetle larva hits that, and they really can't crawl off of it to get into the ground to mutate. So that's one thing. Another thing I do, and I've had some success with, is I bought a roll of roofing. Just rolled roofing, it's 4 feet wide, and it's perfect. I put it underneath all of my hive stands with the stone part up. And again, you know, when the hive beetle larva hits that, it's really difficult to make it all the way off of that to be able to get into the ground and mutate. So keeping something underneath your hives as a barrier between the dirt and your hives also provides a little bit more protection. So that's what we've got at this point. Hive beetles, again, I'm going to go back to the very beginning. You have a strong hive, hive beetles usually aren't a problem. It's the 2nd of August right now, and I would call this hive beetle time because hive beetles seem to just really ramp up at this time. Plus, you're at the point in time where the hive is shrinking. And as the hive shrinks, getting ready and preparing for winter bees and preparing for winter, you've got more openings in the hive, giving beetles a place to lay their eggs. So you want to be able to get those defenses on. Usually about the mid part of July. I'm a little late this year, but mine are all going on next Monday, I think, Monday or Tuesday. And I've got some on right now and some hives that I was a little bit concerned about. But that's what you got. So I hope that helps. I hope that you will, as always, subscribe. If you have any comments, leave the comments below. I'm more than happy to answer them. Again, we're going to put some links in there for all of the things that I showed you. Well, actually, just 2 of the things I showed you. And I won't put a link in for vegetable oil. You know where to find that. Again, any comments, leave them in. Appreciate the subscriptions. Appreciate you watching. Thanks.